building and into the sun. So anyway, I'd love for you guys to participate in this too. And then on that note, we have a very special person that I've been working with for a few months here, named IK. IK is a student, a former student of Dan's, and Dan introduced us to each other over email about a year ago, maybe, and we've been working together ever since. He does the one-on-one private UX office hours. So if you have a question and you'd like an expert to kind of review and work with, IK is the person that we're partnering with to help us with that. And so that will be continuing as we move those meetings into this space, which is larger. IK will be moving with us and having one-on-one office hours for those students and things. So I hope you take advantage of that. And on that note, I will let you take it from here.
Hello everyone. Really cool to be able to introduce Dan Klyn, speak to us today. I studied his class like about a year ago at the University of Michigan, Information Architecture. And learned a lot, not so much about like stack maps and user flows, but about how to think about digital with principles of architecture and build places with meaning. And a lot of mind-blowing stuff, and I continually reference it and live from it. And now I am a UX designer at Hyphen with two of my awesome co-working designers are here as well, Melissa and Jackie. And he introduced me to Crystal and plugged me into the community right when I got out here, which really helped launch my career. So, Dan Klyn. Thank
you. You have to swap out.
The guy who invented information architecture, who I'm a big fan of, Richard Solwerman, was a student of the architect Lou Kahn. And the people who worked in the office with Lou Kahn, the younger architects, hated it that he taught because they wanted more time with him at the office. And so they complained about it, and he reprimanded them. He said, I'll stop teaching when the students learn more than I do. And so I get to learn from some amazing people teaching information architecture. Thank you for that kind introduction. Curious to know why people who live in such a beautiful place want to spend an hour or so talking about information architecture on a Friday night. Isn't that weird?
It'll still be nice when we're done.
Okay. That's true, yeah. In Michigan right now, I could see maybe people choosing to not be stuck at home to go to a place where people are. But I was out there earlier. There's this teeming with people and life. So thank you for coming. I have a few things prepared to say to you.
For some reason, the projector does not do presenter mode for some reason.
Okay.
So
I don't need notes or anything.
okay. I mean, do you want to just you can record from the remote, right?
Yeah, I think so.
For some reason, it's not.
Whoever drew this lovely portrait here, who is the artist, by the way? Can we identify the? So if this, and if the computer thing doesn't work, can you draw while I talk? So who here works with somebody who calls himself an information architect? Who here has that on their business card for themselves? One of us. Two of us. Okay. Three of us. Great. As some of you know, information architecture, what that means, there's this weaselly thing that people say, it depends. What that means has changed over time. And what I'm interested in hopefully will line up with whatever it is that you think information architecture is. And one of the main ways that information architects bring value is focusing on the structure. And that's primarily what I'd like to talk to you about tonight. The relationship between the structure of a thing and strategy. And, ways to line them up. Ideally, there would be some alignment between what we want and the structure of the things that we make. And just probably do this without me. That's a good one. So how about questions about information architecture before we dig in? There's I have an announcement. You asked for UX announcements and event
Let me
announcements.
copy this keynote off.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep, that's
See
fine.
the computer that didn't work.
Yep. And then if you shove the dongle in there, and there's audio also.
Okay.
There is an annual event called the Information Architecture Summit. It's where I met Chris Chandler, which changed my life. And it happens in Minneapolis in about a month. Is that correct? Yep. And as part of that event, I'm participating in something that we're calling an understanding bee. And it's like a spelling bee, only there are questions that people have about information architecture that somebody ought to be able to answer for them. And we've made this into a competition. My best friend and my mentor and I will be fielding questions and trying to give you answers to them in a way that makes them understandable. And if we don't do it right, there's an elimination function. So I could prep for that. If you have questions about information architecture while this happens, you would actually help me prepare, maybe give me a little unfair advantage over my colleagues. So, yeah.
What are some good examples of IA for certain companies like Amazon is a business of IA, websites, all those products, but it's kind of confusing. So what companies are actually doing the job?
That's a great question. The question was, are there examples of companies who have good information architecture? And the question, maybe Amazon would be one of those because there's so many things to organize, and then you doubted that as you were saying it because it's hard to find things, right? Do any of you have friends who are architects in the built environment who make buildings and stuff? They hate everything, don't they? That's a really hard question. And the other thing that's strange about architects is I don't know that there's ever been an architect who isn't an optimist, almost to a irrational degree. Because if you don't think things can be better, then why bother? So there's this weird tension with architects where I think most of the digital products and services that we have ever seen are garbage. They're terrible. So examples of good ones. Maybe the best example of information architecture is Instagram not letting you upload pictures from your computer. And that as a decision about architecture. That the way that service works, there's no reason why functionally, how long have we been uploading pictures from websites? Instagram could have had that functionality on day one, but there's something about what they mean, what they want that service to be, and what they need is for the mobileness of it to be part of what you do. And so I really admire Instagram choosing to withhold some function that people want because they know what they want and they know who they are. It's powerful to not do something. Maybe a related example would be Medium. Does anybody here spout off on Medium, that website where you can write things that look significant? Medium does not allow you to edit your written work on a mobile device. And again, they could allow you to do that, but they don't allow you to do that because they believe in good writing, and they think that you're not going to write anything good on the phone. and you fiddling with it on your phone because you can, is going to make it so that the content there is less good. So those examples may strike you as being about interaction design or being about user experience design, and they are. But it's also what this talk is going to be about at some point, which is strategy and structure. That they know who they are, and they have a strategy for
We'll have
that.
to do it manually for some reason. Anyways, tell me.
Awesome.
Oh, it's
okay. Okay. So yeah, so let's talk about that, strategy and structure. And that's, being a value-bringing winner to a team through the architectural lens. What's that about? Structures for digital environments. Who here works on things that are in digital environments? Who here has significant relations with other human beings in digital places? Most of us. Yeah. So that's why information architects need to be a thing in the world, because these are places that need to be structured well. I'm here with my colleague Bill Holziger-Robinson. We are from a company called the Understanding Group. We're from Michigan. Our main office is in Ann Arbor, where I get to teach brilliant people like IK and Chris. And our office is in Grand Rapids, Michigan, on the other side of the state. We have a small studio. We're moving to a little bigger space that's was formerly a methadone clinic, and we're contemplating naming it the clinic. We call our Grand Rapids the studio now. It's a studio space, but we may be moving into a clinic, which is appropriate in some ways. As you know, Grand Rapids is the epicenter of progressive culture. We're synonymous with this. Your laughs make me think that you don't believe this, but it's true. There are more designers per capita in West Michigan than anywhere else in the country. Furniture companies like Herman Miller and the Steelcase and Keystone Furniture, the lovely products that you're using here, come from West Michigan, designed in West Michigan. And Steelcase provides a magnificent case study in strategy and structure. It's right by the airport in Grand Rapids. This building was built in 1989 before Steelcase went public. And the published budget before it was completed was $78 million. The reports on the as-built budget were $111 million. And we've talked to some people involved with it, and they say, bullshit, there was no budget. No budget. What Steelcase wanted to do with this building, what they want to do with this building is align the structure with what they wanted to do with their business in such a profound way that they had to say the sky's the limit on what it takes to do this. Jared Spool, who many of us know, is a wise leader in UX circles. He said it this way, and I disagree with many of the things that Jared says, but I think this is excellent. What is design? Design is the rendering of intent. And so what Steelcase intended was that they would vertically integrate all of the people involved with making furniture. They were flung all over the place. They wanted the force multiplication of being a vertically integrated company, getting all of the designers, all of the trades, all of the skills involved in designing and making furniture, and to put them in a place that was designed to unlock their creativity. And this is a only weird building. There are 4 of almost everything because you kind of have to. The structure kind of makes it so that there has to be. It's quadruple redundant with internet connectivity, power supplies, water supplies. If there's a zombie apocalypse, get yourself to Grand Rapids, Michigan. Come high with the pyramid with us. It'll be great. It was just sold last year for $7.5 million. $111 million, and that's probably not the real budget. In 20 years, where did all that value go? The risk of aligning your strategy with a structure so tightly that when the world moves, you can't move with it. And the cost of being a vertically integrated manufacturer, this doesn't happen. There were 2,000 people who worked in here at a tight They've rationalized it. They say they've gotten billions of dollars of innovative products out of you, and they feel like it's money well spent. But that's, you want to tell yourself that after going from $111 million to 7.5. So what's that? What's that about? Structure can be read. If design is the rendering of intent, then when we make structures, one of the things that could happen there is somebody could know what you were about. They could read it and understand something about what you were trying to do. And the joke here, if you can't read the slide, is a future archaeologist coming across this thing and saying, wow, this was a monument to permanent employment from some other time. That time is not now. So, strategy and structure, and looking at weird buildings as a way into that. This is, some of you may recognize this from the Woody Allen movie, Silver. This was built in 1963 in Colorado, near Boulder. It's called the Sculpture House, and it was occupied by the architect who designed and lived it. And when asked about this, he said, well, I wanted the shape of it to sing an uncovered song. I can't read that off of this. That's like a private meaning, and that's okay because he was building it for himself. Wanted the shape of it to sing an unencumbered song. What makes this strategy and structure so tricky is that similar structures. So here's and contemporaneous, right? So 1962, Eero Saarinen designs the JFK, the TWA terminal at JFK Airport. And this has the same kind of swoopy, futuristic styling. And what did Saarinen say? Well, his father, Eliel Saarinen, said, always design a thing by considering it in its next larger context. What's the next larger context up front airport? Spaceport. So this is legible, I think. It's doing some of the same weird stuff as the Sculpture House, but this is somehow legible, and not only legible, but this is like strategy and structure toward the future in a way that makes sense. And they're bringing this back. They're rehabbing this, and they're going to bring this back into use. So weird curvy thing. How do we account for this? That sometimes the structure is unintelligible, other times it's fairly legible, and they kind of look the same, and they're contemporary. So how do we sort this stuff out? What is a good structure? Has anybody here been to the LA Philharmonic, seen a concert here? Is this a good place for people?
Yeah.
It's a good place for music? Okay. So, is this correct? Is this the right way to do a concert hall? If you're the neighbors across the street and you have a $2 million condo and you can't keep it habitable because it's so hot, there's so much light bouncing off this thing. Yeah. True story, right?
Yes.
Again, millions of dollars of structure across the street impacted by millions of dollars here. So, but one thing that this is good for people. We enjoy ourselves here, and it seems like it's fitting. So what is good structure? Being able to ask that question without having to guess. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a correct answer though? Anybody been by Frank Gehry's house here in Santa Monica? Neighbors didn't like this either. And this to me is not legible. It's chicken wire and corrugated metal. He was broke. He wanted to learn how to be an architect, so he worked on his own place, and his neighbors hated it. And I can't reverse engineer what the strategy of this is, but what we can say about anything that we make is there are tactics involved. Whether or not there's a strategy, ideally tactics would be lined up with the strategy, but often they're not. Often we just do stuff, like Frank Gehry wanted to do stuff, wants to get intimate with the materials of architecture, so he's doing stuff. Applying tactics, finding the strategy as we go in. This building, this is clearly strategy and structure. What does this building tell you that it is? It's a stack of records. And jukeboxes used to even work like this, right? With the stack up the records. chunk. So there are tactics here too, but we would say, oh well, what they were doing was towards some clear strategy of having the space be unrecognizably the capital of ism. So we don't make stuff out of atoms. At least most of us don't. We make stuff out of pixels and ones and zeros. And but these are places that you go. These are places where, talk about the future archaeologists, future anthropologists will say some of the most important stuff in the history of Middle Eastern culture, development of democracy, happened in a place that is made of information. A place where they were free to gather, where they couldn't do in physical space. For a lot of people around the world, Facebook is the internet. And it's a place that they spend a lot of time. And again, the question, are these places good for people? And are these the correct ways of going about a Facebook or about a Twitter? I struggle with this. In my romantic notions, I would like there to be a correct way. Richard Salwerman told me that there isn't, and I believe. If there isn't a right way, and so the subtitle of this talk is kind of a ruse. We talk about doing it right and doing it wrong. That's not the conversation to have about strategy and structure. But there are good ways, and part of the reason why we don't know how to read the structure of digital places the way that we can kind of read a building like the Capitol Records building is because this is nascent. The things, back to my arrogant statement about all the digital things pretty much are garbage. That's okay because this is Lou Rosenfeld at World Information Architecture Day in New York 2 years ago. Abby Covert was interviewing him, and he said, you all have to remember that this is like minute 5 of hour 3 of day 1 of all of this. So the permission to have been making kind of stupid stuff so far. This is the Stantler trying to figure out what's a car. Henry Ford did not invent the car. Everybody invented the car. There were engines, there were wagons, there were horses, and somehow these things came together to make a car. This Stantler in 1894 in England has a buggy, it has a place of the whip. There's not a horse, can't see it, but it still has the vestigial, you don't need to, unless you kick someone's ass or you get in an accident, like I got my whip. But just like the muscle memory, how do we always do carriage? How do we always do, of course it has to have, not anymore. So a lot of the silly things that we have things in them because, like simulated cage flips, and they have things about them that are goofy and weird. This is the horsey horseless.
Oh no.
But the horses were scared. The horses had never seen a horseless carriage. That was fucked up, right? So a lot of the things that I find objectionable in my finger-waggy architectural arrogance, I ought not do that, because this is just the evolutionary process of a nascent technology that we don't understand, and sometimes we have to do goofy things. But I would...
Do they use like a stuffed horse? That's even more.
Yeah, it's like taxidermy horse, just strapped onto the front of the car. And if you look at a famous film, an early experiment in film on Market Street in San Francisco, if you go to the Internet Archive, there's an early black and white film of Market Street in San Francisco in 1898 or so. It's crazy. There's streetcars and horses and horseless carriages, and so this was actually kind of good for its time. But we don't have to worry about scaring the horses anymore. So let's take the horse heads off of our stuff. Architects in the built environment have known how to do awesome things for a long time, but that's because it is a nascent In 1165 in Lyon, in France, they knew how to make something that is good for people, and the people of Lyon don't believe in God anymore. They don't go to church anymore, but they love this place. This is a fantastically good place for people. And right around the way from here, 100 BC Roman amphitheater in Lyon. Still good for people. They still have concerts there because it sounds that good. So I want to figure out how to get to this, to get beyond nascent with the structure of digital products and services and make things that are good for people that last. Everything that I've ever worked on has been thrown away. Everything that I've ever worked on doesn't work anymore. I have CD-ROMs of really cool things that I did that can't play on IT departments spend millions of dollars on systems that they know they're going to throw away in 2 weeks. So a lot of this is aspirational towards something that we're not at yet, which is having to make stuff that sticks around for a while. And how would you go about doing that? What are some of the early sort of nascent, naive ways of thinking about this? I'm trying to borrow ideas from the built environment and apply them to this stuff. I have 4 of those ideas to share with you. Please keep in mind, though, that I'm a librarian. I love architecture in the built environment. Everywhere that I go, every city that I go to, I stop and look at buildings. But I'm an amateur. But I'm an expert information architect, and I'm trying to bring these things together. And so the first thing that you need to do in order to make structures that are good for people, that might last, that might be worth keeping around, back to Jared, if this is the rendering of intent, then you need to know what you want. And that's a hard question. These people, the way that they decide together, I recently realized that every consensus has a con in it. And what we intend, oftentimes the expression of it is so that we can get out of the meeting. Let's do a democracy, let's vote and figure out what we're going to do and then do it. But that isn't what we intend. The other hole that I see a lot of, not only is there a con in the consensus making, there's also just an absence of strategy. There's the start of a strategy, and there's the end state that everybody knows that they want. But we're just going to throw some tactics in the middle part here until we find some that work. That's not so good. I googled BRD. Does anybody here know what those initials mean and how life-killing they are? Yes. So this is typically how intent is expressed for digital products and services in a Microsoft Word document in a table called the business requirements document. And these are the things that it must do. And we can agree to this in a way. But there's this quote by Korzybski, I don't think I pronounced that correctly. I only heard the first part, the maps not the territory part. I heard that a million times. Jorge Arango presented the whole quote at the Information Architecture Summit not too long ago. Map is not the territory, but, and correct, this sounds a little too common to me. He may be a German Pole. But let's not say correct. If good, the maps that you make are similar to the territory that you're trying to map. And so the deciding on what the websites and apps and stuff should be structurally and in terms of strategy, a BRD is not like the human wrestling match of getting actual things made. And so the first tip toward how do you make strategy and structure map would be good. Mapping your intention using a tool, using a map that's like the territory. And this is a very simple tool that I borrowed from Richard Saul-Wernick, the TED founder and guy who started the idea of information architecture. This is from a book that he wrote in 1972, which is the year I was born. And he did this in a book about parks. If you're designing parks, he's an architect, you have to do contradictory things. A park has to work for young and old. A park has maybe high places and low places. You have to account for the kinds of tensions that are real in the situation you're trying to address. And in a human situation, like a business that's building a website or an app, typically we either or this stuff, which is not making a map that's like the territory, because humanity is not either or. The ones and zeros are on and off. But to say which one of these do you get, there's sort of like the iron triangle is related to this, right? Good, fast, cheap, you can only have two. Every business that I've worked on has to do both of these things at the same time. It's not or, it's yet. In the middle of this is the word yet. And this as a map of intention, if you pile these things up and start finding the tensions that are inherent in the system that you want to make a good structure for. Optimize and innovate. We built a bunch of shit, some of it works okay. There's all this stuff that we still need to do. You can't either or that. Things that address the now, things that address the future. Either oring that is not going to put you where you want to be. Again, to make durable things that are good for people and have a map of what you want there that's like the human territory of complexity and contradiction. This tool, engagement conversion, if we only go toward one of those, if we only know what we want in terms of either or, that's going to be harder for us to succeed. And so we call these intention maps or intention models. And back to the con and consensus, you can take all of your deciders and give them all an equal vote, and then say, where on the intention map are we in terms of whatever this question is? Let's say this is the servicing, acquiring customers continuum. Where do we want to be? Well, the average of what everybody wants is this, let's say. Which ignores what's true, which is that these people are probably differently accountable. Do anybody use RACI in your organizations? People are responsible, they're accountable. If you RACI this, the where what good means would be different than if you take the blended average. But in any case, you can work with these. You can map out your intentions with these complex, contradictory issues that you're trying to address. And through the magic of what those points of intention are, hey, look, it's starting to suggest a structure to us. And the hardest thing is to not look at this. I was in a meeting yesterday, locked in a room all day, people flinging intent all over the place, and they went, okay, so what are we gonna do? Like, we need to not jump into what it looks like we ought to do to solve the problem. We don't know what's really true yet. We think we know what's going on, but to jump from, okay, if intent is the rendering of, or if design is the rendering of intent, then hell, let's get to designing. And jump right to structure. And the discipline, just like it takes discipline for Instagram to deny the million, how many emails do they get every day? How come I can't upload pictures from my computer? How come I can't upload pictures from my computer? Medium, how come I can't edit from my mobile device? No, there's a, what do we want? If you just jump into a structure, does anybody know what this is? This is the first Pizza Hut. But this isn't a hut, really. Adopting this, the step from here. So what do we want? We want a pizza business. I'm just making this up, but our uncle has this weird little house that's too small for people to live in, but it's got a kitchen, and we could kind of cook the pizzas there, and it's by the campus. So this is like a jumping from intent into a structure. And if you've ever heard, there's nothing so permanent as a temporary solution. You end up with the Pizza Hut. As soon as you start going toward that, you keep going, and at some point, it's always a Pizza Hut forever. Even when it's Souvlaki Hut, it's still Pizza Hut. This is from a great podcast called 99% Invisible. When you go to Larry's Giant Subs, I bet they sell more pizza subs than any other sub. And when you go to get your taxes done at Liberty Income Tax, I bet you're hungry. This structure now says something so strongly that you can't undo it. And they've messed with their corporate identity a lot, but they have not been able to reduce the hub. So jumping into a structure and adopting it for now, that might be your, you might be a pyramid forever. You might be a hub forever. Mr. Worman says things that are hard, but they convict me. He says that the classic pervasive seduction for designers is to solve problems without asking what's true. Jumping from intent, I rendered the intent good enough, we got consensus in the meeting, they signed off on the VRD, said let's go, but asking what is the truth. That is not a comfortable topic in business. And we have so many structures that we can just jump into. The Pizza Hut people were lucky that their uncle had the ability to buy the thing that had stuff. But we all could take an idea and dump it into a set of responsive templates tomorrow and be up and running doing a thing. So that's another weird difference between the built environment and our environment. Not that it's inexpensive to keep changing stuff in digital, it's probably as expensive as in the built environment, but how quickly you can just get into a structure. And then what does that do? Especially if it isn't particularly well aligned with your strategy. Borrowing somebody else's structure. This is a church up in La Jolla. In 1959, if you were an architect and somebody had you design church, and you wanted to do it awesome, you would copy what Corbusier did in France. Corbusier and Ronchamp Chapel in France was the apple of church architecture. And so many other churches, so this is Carlton Oaks, oh, it's in San Diego, kind of hitting the same, and I really want to go here, I've never been here, drove past this. It's doing some of the same things, but it's so not the same. Copying somebody else's structure and putting your strategy into it. In the built environment, there are examples of this that are not good. And I bet in digital, there are some examples of this that are not good. Two, something like material design. Something that somebody is doing that people seem to like, that we don't necessarily understand what's making it good, but we can copy it. We can be flattered, we can be like Google. But is it appropriate? Is it good? Which one of these am I on? Can you push the...
There we go.
You go? Okay, so that was part one. Part one is mapping your intention. And having that map be, like people are, able to speak to the complexity and contradiction of people. Next step is to arrange the meeting. I'm going to need somebody to be a slide advancer for me, I think. Thank you. So here's another bit of wisdom from Mr. Worman. This is from a book that he wrote in 1989 called Hats. And this is maybe closer to what you thought information architecture was about if you had a sense of it, sort of like the organizing of the things on the website or the categories and things. And what I didn't pick up, I went to library school. I am a ALA accredited librarian. And they never told us this. This would have been good to know. But librarians actually don't have choices a lot in how to arrange things. They're using an arrangement system, either Library of Congress or Dewey or some other system. They're using it from somewhere else. But if you're making choices about organizing stuff, the way that you organize it changes what it means. And that is, that gives me vertigo to think about that. If you go to the next slide, there's a thought experiment that Mr. Worman did with dogs to prove this out. And one of the differences maybe between information design and information architecture is an information designer would want to subtract some of the dogs. The cacophony of dog morphologies here it's not pleasing. You can't make a pleasing visual order out of this. But Mr. Worman's thought experiment is when he ran the TED conference, he knew somebody who could make custom stuffed animals because in the swag bag for TED there was a teddy bear that looked like Richard Worman. So he had teddy bears on the mind and thought about, well, if I could get that guy, if he can make a teddy bear that looks like me, Mr. Worman loves dogs. And if I could get stuffed animals of all of the AKC registered dogs, males and females, and then arrange them differently, think of all the things I can understand about dogs and people. If you take the most popular breeds over the last 5 years and look at the sizes of them, and females are more popular than males for house plants. So take the females that are most popular in the AKC over the last 5 years, compare that with 50 years ago, and that correlates with the square footage that people have in their houses. What's possible to understand through fiddling with the arrangement is it's awesome. And really powerful. This is an example from some work that we got to do with the University of Michigan Department of Human Resources, really sexy client. Wall-to-wall navigation everywhere, because think of the consensus meeting. How many people were in the meeting? Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There were 13 people in that meeting. They all got what they wanted. And garbage, unusable, awful. And on the next slide, the recommendation that we gave them is to reduce 12 or 13 to 4. And the fourth one would be sort of a strip along the top. Get a job, do your work, take care. Living in a place like this is completely different than how you live in a place like the other place. But it requires the previous step, which is to have your intent mapped out in a way that's cognizant of realizing those different power relationships and getting somebody even more powerful than those people to railroad it through.
Yes? Take care, you mean like goodbye?
No. Take care of yourself.
Oh.
Take care of so professional development, childcare, health benefits. These were not exactly how the labels, something this pure can't survive the human process. But we still ended up with 4 categories, and some of them have a few more words, and they're not as crisp, but as a way of lining up strategy and structure, making this a better place for people, that minding the arrangement as a big part of that is how we came up with a structure that they liked so much. They wanted to live in this world so much that they found the powerful people upstairs to make all of the departmental, that's the thing about the family with a lot of kids and every kid needs to be fed the same amount. We got past that because there was this idea of how we wanted the structure to line up with our strategy. Oh, it's working. Right. Or did you hear the click? So the difference between can I keep doing that? So what's the difference between a thesaurus and a dictionary? It's largely the arrangement of the pieces inside. And being willing to look for arrangements that are right there available to you that you may not be seeing because nobody's ever done it that way before. This is the first atlas that I know of that wouldn't have you driving from Alabama to Alaska to Arizona to Arkansas. Richard Sahlborman only does things for himself. He doesn't give a shit about any of us. And he got a car. He didn't have a car for a long time. He lived in New York. And when you're a rich person, you have to have a place in the Hamptons, so you have to have a car. And he wanted an atlas and couldn't abide the alphabetical insanity. So coming up with a way to organize, again, arrange it differently means something really different. This is a way that you can make an atlas better for people. The computer might like the alphabetical version, but if you're driving across the country, this works better. And probably one of the things that he's most famous for is a map of the Tokyo subway system. And this is Google. I'm looking for it, and there it is. I don't see that. But using arrangement, this is you can't get off the, if you want to get off in between here, it doesn't matter. So the distance between these, if it's literally closer or literally more apart, it doesn't matter. So taking liberties with arrangement. He's not taking away any of the dogs. He's not taking away any of the stops. But using arrangement to make it more meaningful. This is a pretty relevant picture to the people who live here to help them figure out how to get around where they live. And then those were happy examples. There are bad examples of arrangement. In 2006, Amazon built a system to merchandise their website to automatically harvest the co-occurrence of what people look for in their browsing sessions to drive the "did you mean?" And it just is true in their data that users who searched for abortion also searched for adoption. But it was not true that users who searched for adoption, again, this is just data. This is just data. They just don't, or they didn't during this time. Maybe they do now, don't know. But this feature was being driven by the data and was perceived as purposeful. If design is a rendering of intent, we rendered some things. It was thought of as intent. So this is the cautionary tale. If the way you're organizing stuff means that it could be a different thing, an adjacency makes it mean something different. All of a sudden, Amazon's got a dog in this awful question. No, you don't want that. So changing adjacencies changes what it means and can be construed as purposeful even when it's not. And then one last thing about arrangement is so often, and this is a fantastic book, if you want to go from 0 to 100 with information architecture, and you don't have time for footnotes and all that jazz, she created the Don't Make Me Think of information architecture. It's brilliant. So this is a picture she drew of what she saw at her neighborhood bodega. And in a digital store, we'd probably take the middle one away, right? Like typically we don't want to present customers with options they can't act on. But this is actually pretty meaningful. To leave that spot there is information. That tells you that people like that one better, even though it costs more than the one on either side. It makes you wonder what's the difference between jam and jelly. There's all sorts of meaning going on here. So the choice to take something away, people talk about seamless. We want the experience to be seamless. Maybe not. Maybe it should be seamful. Knowing where the gap is tells you something. Knowing where the seams are is information that you can use to make it be a place that's better for people. Jorge Arango, somebody that I've mentioned already, he's currently helping rewrite the Polar Bear book, the O'Reilly book on information architecture that was stuck in the 3rd edition in 2006 and was maybe going to just stay there. There's a 4th edition that's coming out in a couple of months. Jorge is helping to write it. He says that information architecture, what's this all about? It's about the structural integrity of meaning across all these different contexts that we have to do stuff in. So in order to maintain the structural integrity of what we mean, minding those arrangements is pretty ethically important. And then for the sake of time, I'll skip this one. I'll skip this one too. Okay. So moving from intent to structure through the question of what does it mean? What do we mean by what we want? Oh, that's fine. And the next sort of step on the path, so the first one is we need a map of your intention. Second piece is you need to arrange things in a meaningful way, or at least be thinking about how meaning changes when arrangement changes. Third part that you need in order to make things that are good structures is dumb models. And this may be the dumbest one of all. And I have a little, if the audio is the... Oh, sorry about that. Can it reach? Or actually, I wonder if I can run the video off of that one. Okay, when we hit the next button, there may be a video.
Here. Without much further ado, I give you The Derek Zoolander Center for Kids Who Can't Read Good. What is this? A center for ants? What? How can we be expected to teach children to learn how to read if they can't even fit inside the building? Derek, it's just a... I don't want to hear your excuses! The center has to be at least 3 times bigger than this!
So that was not a dumb model. And that was what we do to our customers and clients and colleagues by showing them a high fidelity prototype 2 days after the meeting where they told us what they wanted. Making fools out of people, because they don't know what they're seeing. You can make a high fidelity prototype in Acture in 10 minutes that is indistinguishable from a built product. So that's a fancy model, and that isn't what we need. What we need is dumb models. And what architects used to do, it's such a shame that so many of them don't. Poor architects today, they have clients who come in with a 3D CAD fly-through of the house they've already designed in Google SketchUp. But it used to be that in the early stages of architectural work, they would make maquettes, really crude-ass models with loofah sponges on toothpicks for trees, and chicken wire, and nobody would ever mistake this for the building. Because it's dumb. It's not trying to deliver all of the information about it's not an image. It's playing with structure and saying what might be good for us to do. And if you go to the next, yeah. So the idea that you need models at this point. So again, where are we? We have a map of what we want. We've thought a lot about arrangement. Now we're making some models. These models should be rhetorical, not pictorial. And we're too good at drawing cool-looking shit, right? Like a whole whiteboard full of wireframes and sketchy, awesome-looking things. And those are being read as pictures. You need to rough these things up. You need to make them uglier. You need to make them not objects of desire. You need to make them as arguments for what it might be like, what might be good to do. A fancy model is read as what we're going to do. This is an early version of what we're going to do. Chicken wire and loofahs. This isn't what we're going to do. I don't think we're going to do that, unless we're Frank Gehry. That's not what we're going to do. So, here's a picture of a dumb model that I made for a customer of ours. Over here's the world as it came to us in the engagement. Whole world presented as shopping, but inside of this shopping e-commerce world, there were some things that you couldn't put in the shopping cart. Things where you get through the choreography of the site and custom-made things. There's just a dilute call to action to like get on the phone and call us after everything else that you saw what had an add to cart button. Really strange, and rentals and the about us and custom quotes. So not showing UI, our clients hate this so much. We resist and resist and resist. I could have shown this in a UI. I could have shown current site with your whatever tabs, and then Photoshop in the new tabs, and maybe there's fewer of them, but they've got better names, but it's still a website. This is still an argument for what might be good to do. This is not a recommendation for what I think it ought to be. And even sort of a language model. What we have today is flat. Is that true? Can we own that? We have this flat world. When we make the new world, it's going to be dimensional. Today we drill down and are often disappointed if our drill bore goes into these holes. In the new world, we want to be able to see across. Maybe. This is one big pancake. What if we had a number of tasty cakes? Actually said that to the client. They thought it was funny. Consistent. Everything looks like commerce, and then it isn't sometimes. But it feels consistent, and what I wanted to propose rhetorically is, well, what if it was articulated? What if some parts of it were more are more detailed than others. Says I'm exhaustive, and then we find a dead end that doesn't deliver. So let's make it more meaningful so that they know what we did actually. And this is about as dumb as they get. Circles and words. You can take a lot of the words away. Could we maybe structure it like this? Another dumb model. Making an argument for how it could be an arrangement based on some intent that we modeled well. Skip that one per time, skip that one per time. Okay, last step on the path toward good structure is having a vocabulary to then talk about when it's finally time, when you relent finally and you start showing them things that look like web pages and apps and things. The ability to talk about them with a vocabulary. And the vocabulary that I recommend for architectural kinds of conversations is not the vocabulary of UI. Even though I just said we're going to get closer to UI, I'm still saying not UI yet. There's a vocabulary about this stuff, and it changes all the time, and I can't keep up with it. Does anybody know, so this thing that comes up over your, does anybody know what that's called? Oh my God, you guys know this stuff. Okay, how about these three options that are, you can only pick one. I've never heard that before, segmented control. I've also heard radio group, which is crazy. Back in my day, we had radio buttons, and there were just two. Radio group. And then how about these guys? You work in ticketing, right? How many tickets do I want? What are these called? Steppers. If I could have had a meaningful conversation with one or two of you if we were talking like that. So let's not talk like that. Let's talk about some different stuff. I'm obsessed with the year of my birth, all of the cool things I find from 1972. This is a book from a book by Robert Venturi and Denise Scott Brown, who are architects that architects hate, and I love them. And she came up with this as an easy structural vocabulary to use with clients to talk about what we might do together. At one end of the range is a duck. This is a picture of, it's called the Long Island Duckling. It is a duck-shaped building where you can buy fowl, roasters, broilers, ducks, mats, something, geese. So the structure here is really easy to read. If you want to sell frisbees out of here, good luck. When structure is so synonymous with what you mean that you can't unmean it after you structure it that way, that's a duck. And at the other end of the range, and again, they're learning this from Las Vegas in 1972, scandalous that architects, serious architects from Princeton, Yale, he was at Princeton, she was at Yale, her studio, studying Las Vegas, because this is a place that's good for people, so we can learn from it. And they loved the decorated sheds of Las Vegas. Simple barns and just boxes that you can put a sign in front of it and you know what it means. And then when the purpose changes, the meaning changes, you can change the sign. And then if you want to amplify the meaning, you can make the signs really fucking big. It's great. But it's a decoupling of meaning and structure. And having the meaning part be more changeable because it's in a different layer than the structural layer. And so this as a range, I'm seriously suggesting to you that you could have conversations with the deciders on projects to say, for parts of what we're looking at, is this part a duck? Is this part a decorated shed? And can we own that? Clearly, your beautiful Capitol Records building is a duck. If you wanted to do other things out of this building, it would be a waste, for one thing. Even though, and isn't this funny? Records are coming back, but during the height of, Napster and Rio MP3 players and stuff, this was maybe like, oh shit, are we locked into a modality? Is Capitol Records ever going to have records again? So thank God for the revival of vinyl, because their building is still relevant. It still helps them be themselves in their business. And these are some of the attributes. If you want to know what's a duck, these are for the built environment. Any of these can be applied to products and services. It doesn't say I'm a stack of records because it is. The ornamentation isn't applied to it. It's part of the, it's a round building for God's sakes. Revolutionary, original. You have to use new words to talk about it sometimes, like steppers and action sheets. Pretty all around the building, not just in the front or where the people look at it. Consistent, advanced technology, looks expensive, interesting, and heroic. We were up at the Getty today. I don't particularly like the buildings up there. I love the gardens. Trying to figure out, is that a duck or a decorated shed up there? And I think it's a duck. Not that, what else would you do up there with those buildings? It's an icon for rewriting the history of what the Getty family did to their fellow men, with this beautiful contribution back to us, wallpapering over all the bad things that they did in their business. This was a decorated shed back in the day, right? Just a little sign that says Pizza Hut. That could have said Dan's Nails and Hair Emporium. You have to explicitly denote what it is. Pizza Hut. This isn't a hut yet, this is a house. You apply the ornament to the outside, you put a sign on it. Evocative, evolutionary, ordinary, conventional, pretty in the front, mess in the back maybe, inconsistent, boring, expedient. And Venturi and Scott Brown say this is the way to go. Yes?
By old words, do you mean that it has to be things that people already know what it is? You can't innovate with it?
More like how you would talk about it. Like this has casement, or this has, not casement windows, but this has a lintel and it has fairly standard construction and brickwork and things like to talk with people about how to make this. You wouldn't have to say action sheet or steppers or radio group. You would say, you know, bricks and squares, rectangles. Plain, ordinary. They like architecture that you have to take a second look at before you'd really be impressed with what they did there. So as a range of what you can do, I think it's fascinating. I read this article. Has anybody seen this? This is not too far from here, right? This is where the, how do you say the C word? Chia Day. So this is this was an advertising agency, and this is a piece of sculpture by Klaus Oldenburg and his wife, whose name or partner. I'm bad. You'd think I could pronounce Dutch names, being from West Michigan. But this was, Frank Gehry collaborated with these artists and made this headquarters for an advertising agency. And my sense is that as an advertising agency, this is a decorated shed, right? Like a pair of binoculars is just kind of like a big ass sign. It doesn't say advertising. This weird part over here, maybe because it's weird, advertising is weird. I don't know. But there's this fascinating observation that somebody from the LA Times, Christopher Hawthorne, who I think is an architecture critic for the LA Times, Google moved into here. All of a sudden, the decorated shed is a duck. Because for Google, this means search.
Yeah.
So isn't that interesting that how you who's, again, the human side of it, we're making places that are good for people. If there are different people, if you acquire a whole new bunch of traffic through SEM, let's say, that's okay, you can let it run, it'll loop. That's different. So applying this to websites then, this is, has anybody used this to book tickets on Virgin?
Yeah.
Is this great? I think this is a duck. I think this is so Virgin that you couldn't really, I don't know anybody else who could occupy this and present this and have it be, this means Virgin. It's clean, it's simple, they don't do car rentals. Most of the booking experiences that you've seen are from providers who have multiple lines of business that they're trying to sell. This is so nice and clean. My sense is that this is a duck. Square, that's certainly a duck. The ornamentation, all of their branding and visual presentation, the device is a square, the name is square, the geometry of how they present this is all multiplying their meaning and their brand and their name, and it's beautiful. And this is a duck. And then if you, again, using the heuristics for knowing whether it's a duck or not, this seems like a duck. On the other side of it, PayPal used to relentlessly copy Square. To the point of did anybody ever see I never saw one in the wild, but I saw them advertising it, a triangle shaped? Right? And their name is a triangle. But they needed to have a thing, and so they decorated their shed to look a lot like Square when Square was the thing to be. And now that Apple Pay is the thing to be, they can change their look and feel to compete with somebody else. And especially this, excuse me, pretty in front. 2 clicks into this is regular old PayPal. Has everybody ever had that? Like, oh, this is cool. PayPal redesigned their thing. Oh, no, they didn't. They decorated their shed again, and it's great. And I bet they spend a lot less money on development, and I bet they win with decorating their shed. Every time the world changes, they can change too. If Square wants to be triangle, good luck. I think the most magnificent decorated shed of all is Craigslist. I've seen designers, again, difference between architecture and design. Any redesign of this, people have taken things away. In order to make this be a pleasant visual graphic design experience, I've seen people take stuff away from this, and you can't take stuff away from this. This stuff in this is what makes it so good. That you can sell a coach, and you can hire a coach, and it's the same. It's the same thing. They have a structure here that works really well across all sorts of different contexts, and this is not. It doesn't really mean anything. The UI is not trying to make you understand a meaning of any sort. It's letting you focus on the people occupying it. You have a question?
Is it because they take it to such that level? Does that make it a duck?
No, because it's not. I mean, maybe from how iconic it's become, and if somebody else were to try to adopt this look and feel, they would maybe say you're trying to copy. So the fact that there's a design look that can become synonymous with the thing, I don't think that makes it a duck. I think the duckness or shedness, especially if you want to use this to work on digital products and services together, and say these words with a straight face to people, is the structure of this going to be so locked into the thing that we think it means that we're willing to commit to that and know that it's going to be really hard to back out of that? Or do we want to remain flexible enough with what this means? They could do a redesign at any point here. They're not locked into, I bet their data model is just beautiful. But the presentation here is as neutral as they come, as I read it. Yes?
If I could dovetail on that, I would say that the interface gets out of the way. It's not like front and center. It's more about the content and data.
Yes, and the content of a duck is the structure. The content of a decorated shed, I never said that before, thank you. The content of the duck is the structure. You know that you can buy ducklings in the Long Island duckling building because it's a duck. This doesn't, again, I can hire a life coach, I can buy a motor coach. I can do all the things here, it's great. And then lastly, what makes this really hard for digital is that we can't just look at the wrapper or the UI or the surface in order to make the decision about whether it's a duck or a shed. I have a dear friend, so proud of him. Today he sent me a picture of the paper that says that he successfully completed parole, which almost nobody does. He was incarcerated for 2 years, and he was a jackass and burnt a lot of bridges, and I was his link to the outside world, and it was through this. You may have heard that the prison food in Michigan is so bad that there are lawsuits. It's terrible. So he didn't eat the food. So he needed somebody on the outside every month to go in and replenish this account to get him peanut butter and toothbrushes and the things that he needed to survive. And the first time that I logged into this, like, this is the crappiest e-commerce website I've ever seen. And shame on them for not giving a shit for the people who have no other option. You know, there's no other way for me to get food to my friend other than using this thing that visually presents itself like garbage. And then after the 18th time of using it, this is a wonderful duck. They know that this isn't about choosing products. There's only For me to examine the Snicker, this is as big as the product imagery ever gets, because you're not really choosing. My sense is that they actually know that I'm angry. When I'm using this website, I'm angry that my friend was as big of a jackass as to burn the other bridges to people who are more plausibly his lifeline. Why is it me? I hate doing this. This reminds me of, I hate this. And they have made this so easy to get through there, to just blast through it. You have one more picture? Yeah. Boom, 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 quantities, done, out of there. Not thinking about how awful everything is around this situation in my life. So buildings that are Dutch, you can see that they are. Sometimes, and again, this is great for us though, because we make interactions. The interaction here is duck. The content of the duck is its structure. This is saying, get you through quick, you aren't shopping, you are. This is order taking as fast as you can go. And then the pièce de résistance for us digital folks is we can do both. The World Wildlife Fund is a decorated shed on the desktop. This looks like any other, you could put Nat Geo, you could do any number of things here. Because they want you to get into the content. They do amazing storytelling here. Who are the content people are for this? Awesome.
What's it called?
The World Wildlife Fund, WWF, worldwildlife.org. Species, places, threats, our work. Huge hero story, all sorts of beautiful visual presentations of storytelling. And then their nonprofit, when they've got you on the handheld, you didn't even see these probably. Donate and adopt. On mobile, this is a different place. This is a duck. This is about donation and supporting a nonprofit. This is a much wider entry ramp for a whole bunch of different kinds of people and experiences. This is laser beam targeted to experientially, transactionally, interactively. So we can do both. And so in summary, I think, this is the title of the book Before Learning from Las Vegas that Robert Venturi wrote, Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture. These are supposed to be places that are good for people, and we can confidently say that this is how people are. We want things that are at odds with other things that we want. We need things that are different than other things that we need, and having both is hard. So any sort of an approach to, again, if everything that we've made up until now is basically garbage, what if we wanted to make things that last, that are good, acknowledging that these are places for people, so they need to be able to not only accommodate complexity and contradiction, but like embrace complexity and contradiction. This was the airport, a couple airports from me ago. Doesn't matter though, because this is the airport now. Where did they go? Where are all of these people? They are in a different place. They're in a place made of information for a couple of minutes. Somebody, a colleague of me and Bill's had a preemie who just went home from the hospital today. For a minute, I'm back in Grand Rapids with my friend celebrating something really awesome, and then I hop back out and I'm in line for food at the airport. And you're on Mount Kilimanjaro, surveying the wonder of nature, and 150 times a day, most people on the low end, if you have a smartphone, that's how many times you're going to someplace else. And these places have not been good for people. And we're going there all the time. All the important stuff in our lives are affected by these places made of information. 40 hours. This is Steve Jobs with his iPad. 40 hours a month. Most people. Not nerds, not us. God, how much do we spend? Does anybody know? Has anybody tried to track it? unbelievable how much, in the Industrial Revolution, 40 hours is a unit of production, right? That's how much we have invested in places made of information. And they need to be better than they are. So we practice these and preach them. They are often effective for us, but it still makes it. And I don't remember what the next slide is. Oh yeah, questions or objections. I actually prefer to start with objections, but are there any questions? Yes.
It seems like maybe a lot of the ducks are sort of led by marketing. I mean, is that just an obvious thing to say? I mean, obviously not all of them, but just proximity to marketing, lead to the duck.
Well, I think you're right. At least for sure in the built environment, with a building that you go to the trouble of making the shape of it be that meaningful, to orchestrate that with how you're marketing. Yeah, for sure. And if what you're trying to do is reflect what's true about the business, then those are key people in these conversations about, especially if you think back to that dumb model, that really crude model about how might it be and what's the argument we're making for what to do here. I would think that the marketers, the ones who are managing the image, like we're going to structurally mirror the images that we put out in the marketing with the structure of the thing that we're making. Would that be a good idea? How long is this current campaign going to go? Are we going to try to, if we're going to do duck-like things with our product or our service right now relative to the campaign, is it going to change after the campaign? Do we have to, is it temporarily a duck and then it's going to be a different kind of duck and then a different kind of duck? But yeah, I think marketers, being able to work with meaning and structure, they love that.
Yeah, it's a kind of, beginning we showed the cathedral, and that should be like an aspirational information space. And that's something I've been hooked on, at least the concept for a while, because they were information spaces. They were meant to be read. They were instructive. We're moving into a time where information is more ambient and it's more around us, and we're getting away from just purely UIs. Like, what are the how do you take the kind of artifacts that we're creating now and translate them into that kind of spatial world?
Part of that's a multi-million-dollar question that you asked there. Part of the thing that our clients hate, which is our resistance to express the work we're doing in terms of UI until the very last, absolute can't put it off anymore. That's part of that. That to be ready for this, to be ready for just voice. When we take what we want with our intent and jump right into structure, right into UI, we've made it less possible for what we're, again, we want to make it last. If we want to have things that are good for people that are enduring, that we don't just throw away every 2 years. Part of why we've had to throw everything away so frequently is because we made it be a UI first and not an idea, not what it means, asking what's true, that thing, jumping to solve the problem, and because we're embarrassed. There are emotions involved. If you want to talk about truth with a room full of people, Christopher Alexander is another architect that architects hate that digital people love. He really thinks that that's part of the reason why so many things in the built environment are awful. It's because we're so terrified of our feelings. And talking about how we feel is part of what's true, because there's no, I don't want to offend anybody, but there's no truth. We feel things, right? So we have to engage emotionally, and in abstract wireframes, we don't have to talk about feelings. That's either cruel or it sucks, or let's split test that and figure out which one wins. Yeah. So truth seeking as the prerequisite to problem solving that just sounds like it adds cost and time.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna have to talk about my feelings, and I'm not good at that. Yes?
One thing I've always thought of, well, at least since I've done IA or started doing it, is with physical spaces, people have a feeling of relatedness. Either you relate to it or you don't, and either it's a good sense or it's really bad, like, oh my god, what am I doing here? Let me get out of here sense. And sometimes with interfaces or just experiences that are digital, you kind of either get that guttural, like, what the hell is this? Or like, wow, this is like 5 hours later, you're still immersed in it. At least that's how I kind of relate to it.
I think, does that seem real to the rest of you? Because back in the day when we put people in a lab behind the two-way glass, I don't think we would get those kinds of honest responses of something here doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Again, if there's has anybody here been to London and walked past the Lloyd's building? Richard Rogers designed it. I felt awful. As soon as I was just like, it's against humanity. It's awful. And that's not a serious conversation. That isn't something you're gonna bill for. But really, yeah, how does this make you feel? Christopher Alexander would test pieces of an architecture by saying, in the presence of this, do you feel more whole as a person than in the... So what might be good to do if there's no correct way? Well, here's a model. How does that make you? Do you feel more alive? Do you feel more whole in the presence of that? That's Clown Town. That's like fruits and nuts kind of crazy talk. But why don't we have nice things yet? Maybe that's why. Because these are places. Our bodies are reacting to these places. Putting the website in the test behind the glass is putting the thing in a Ziploc baggie and then saying, how do you like it? It's already dead. Chris.
How do we get to the end of nascent? Because it doesn't seem like that's where we're at. It actually seems like, I mean, the question about how do you do these experiences now in the ubiquitous computing environment, right? Like it seems like we're having to throw away our work faster, not the other way around. So sorry, maybe we never get to anything good.
Maybe we need some storage already.
Yeah.
You know, if people need 10,000 hours to master something, a society may need, X amount of years to master.
That's a great question, and I will not answer it directly, but I think it's our clients. Jonas Salk. Has anybody been to the Salk Institute in La Jolla? Jonas Salk was the client that made Lucan able to be a great architect. So having clients, being able to find the clients who want to talk about what's true, finding a client who is willing to do truth-seeking as the prerequisite to problem solving, clients haven't been given that as an option yet. So I think there's also the responsibility of, we're leading with design, which is solving the problem, and rendering the intent as quickly as we can. So maybe there's also a responsibility for us, which is to get vulnerable in a sales context. Think about me and Bob sitting down at Cisco and talking about truth-seeking as a prerequisite to problem solving. Like, they don't want to hear about that, but they've also never been given the chance to respond to that. And so I think giving a challenge to clients. We could just keep solving your problems, and that'll work for a time, but that's going to bottom out at some point. What if we said we wanted this to be a place that was good for people, and tried to do that? And there are Elon Musk. Who is it? There are some clients out there who can do this, and then maybe we'll have something good.
And I hope it's faster than your sense of it, but, yeah. Yes?
Is goodness synonymous with durability? Like when you look back at the amphitheater and the cathedral, past whatever politics, whatever fall of the Roman Empire, the amphitheater continues to have utility. With the rate at which technology evolves and market changes, what is good today might not be good in 4 years. So is the goal to design for truth and good? Or is durability something like?
That's a great question. The steel case pyramid was supposed to last for hundreds of years, and it will last for hundreds of years, but steel case could only operate it for 20. Richard Saul Wurman designed some buildings on Long Beach Island in New Jersey that were called sandcastles, and all but one of them are gone now, which is the nature of sandcastles, it turns out. They get washed away. So I don't know that permanence, and you didn't say permanence, but durability. The Roman architect Vitruvius said that the difference between just a building and architecture is that it has to have three things. It has to have durability, it has to lend itself to commerce in a very successful way, and it has to be delightful. You have to have all three of those things in order for it to be architecture. But the kinds of durability that we're going after are more durable than the implementation of the interface. Like we were talking about, if there's like Craigslist data model, that transcends interface. I bet they can send that data into so many wonderful contexts. And that data structure, what's true? What's true about the relationship between these categories and these subcategories? They have worked tirelessly on that, and that structure is durable. The structure lasts, but you also brought in the question, which I think is fascinating, which was, what does good mean? And that changes over time. I think that's hard. And our stuff hasn't been around long enough for us to understand.
Maybe it's not durability, but how we can morph it, how morphable it is. Because we're always changing, nothing is static. So how can we make something, because the word durable by itself has this very static-y, connotation, and so we don't want it to be durable in that sense. We want it to be able to move along with time and change.
And if we could have that conversation with our clients before we make stuff, what does durable mean in terms of this engagement, and what are our expectations for how durable it is?
I think a lot of clients, that I've worked with so far, they don't know a lot of things. They don't even know what they want. So a lot of us have gone in there saying, what is your problem? Okay, we'll solve it, but maybe the conversation needs to go further, more like a psychologist or someone who's a detective to dig in and handhold them. I'm sorry, but it just seems to be that way. And if you don't teach them, if you don't guide them from the get-go, it will just go haywire.
Well, and that's, we feel like if we call our new office a clinic, that's kind of, another sense of durability that might be more appropriate for what we do is the ability to resist entropy, which is automatically a dynamic process. In order to resist the tendency of everything to fall apart, it would have to be a living system. So I think words like sustainability, ecosystem, environment start to get us closer to maybe not durable, last forever standpoint, but the value somehow persists, even though the forces are all trying to make it.
Or maybe the thought of just the thing doesn't have to end or finish, that we can start it, we go here, we can start that, start this. And it's okay to have that, but then we only use what we need and then we go with that. And I think that will leave open door for a lot more creativity. That now I have to have this thing go from A to Z. And let's put all our energy into doing that, and then your brain is so focused on that, you don't have any room to bring in other things in.
And back to Eero Saarinen and Elio, his father's thing about designing for the next larger context. If we're making a chair, we have to be talking about a room. If we're making a room, we have to be talking about a house. If we're making a house, we have to be talking about a city. I think that also helps get us to our version of durable, whatever that ends up being.
Just a random thought or something. I just noticed like in culture, like in terms of like the manufacturing industry and economics and even in the movie industry, everything seems to be funneling down in terms of like pace, and industrial pace. Like they just like it seems like everyone just wants to make profit, and they don't really care about what nobody cares about the Kira Kurosawa, the older director, the pacing of the movies is slower back then. Star Wars was a lot slower back then. Now it's all fast paced. Everything wants to be faster, more dialogue, more faces of the actors, in terms of like instead of value. And I see kind of like a trend with cars and like mobile devices as well. Like they only seem to be made to last like 6 years or 3 years. And it's not that, I don't work there, I don't work in those industries, but I think they're doing it because it's an economical balance for them. Like they don't want something that lasts so long that they can't make another thing. That's my theory. Like they have people that manufacture, they need these jobs, and if they
I
make
work near Detroit, so planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been around for a long time.
is that accurate? I mean, if they just
That feels true to me.
yeah.
And then the follow-up question to that then, are we responsible for that? I've been using a loaner iPhone for a couple of weeks. Don't ever have a problem with a Microsoft phone. It's bad. So I'm using an iPhone that I'm borrowing, and it seems like app developers are building for the processor in the next phone. Back to that thing about firmness, commodity, and delight needing to be there for architecture. Frank Lloyd Wright did this all the time. He kind of, firmness, somebody else, all of the cantilever, the things we love Frank Lloyd Wright buildings for, the big cantilevers that jut out, none of those worked. They all were sagging from like day one. And they've all been, because he's a revered architect, structural engineers have gone in and fixed them using the technology of today. And I think that's part of the acceleration that we're doing, is even so back to, I can't change what the movie industry does from how it likes to edit films to make it more fast. But I could be more respectful of what the technology needs of the thing that I'm making are, and maybe try to make it be good for now. But I think all of the problems that you just described are ones that are, back to those words that I gave you, environment, ecosystem, sustainability. I think there's a language in the built environment right now. Some of the leading companies in the world, the facilities people hate a LEED Platinum. I got busted for smoking. I was in Portland. There was a LEED Platinum building that I was waiting for Soren at his office. It's a LEED Platinum building. I'm leaning against the building, and my kids are in Michigan, so I feel free to enjoy a cigarette. And somebody came out and said, "For LEED Platinum, you can't smoke a cigarette within 800 feet of this building." Companies they need to show their stakeholders and their shareholders that they're environmentally responsible. Sometimes, back to sort of marketing, sometimes that's how companies today are positioning themselves to be more loved by us, is that they're saying that they're ethical, that they have sustainability built into their practices. And so I think if we show up in our context and start using those words, that's convicting as hell. Is this sustainable? I've given information architectural recommendations to companies, and upon implementing them, it changed their world so much that people have been fired and new jobs have been created, and that wasn't part of the conversations. That was not sustainable, actually. this one client in particular lost somebody who was really great because we moved the world and where she fit in didn't make sense anymore. And it was either promote her to have more authority because she gets it, or not, and she didn't get the promotion, so she did. And if we think about how sustainable, are there enough people to make the content for the thing we just, never. So to the language bomb of, is this sustainable? Is a minimally viable every 2 weeks sustainable? I don't know. But just to start using this language, I think will also help us get past nascent into big kid stuff, like the consequences of your actions. To behave as if that were relevant to us and what we do. That would be pretty
And
big.
do you want to take one more question?
Sure. This feels like a combination of like a support group and a church.
So, just this conversation about physical things and being long-standing, the sense that digital products are going out the window really quickly. Do you think that has something to do with the fact that on the planet there's a limited amount of space, so we can't just keep building things forever? So we realize, oh crap, we have to value our land. We want to make things that will last for a long time. In the digital space, there's practically no limits. You can just keep making websites. No one uses them. You just make another website. So when do we get to that point where, like, oh yeah, just have to
I think we're already there. We got to do the first job that my company got was with Travelocity, and they had hundreds of thousands of pages that they didn't know where they were. They had 4 content management systems. They had just deaccessioned the 5th one, and they had this was 4 years ago. They had CompuServe branding on pages that were still in existence. We live here. We live here. Even though there's theoretically infinite space, there aren't infinite servers. Every crappy thing that we make, there's a data center hooked up to a hydroelectric plant that has to, if you had to, think about if your enterprise IT department had to be accountable for the number of processor cycles the thing generates, and the new one has to do less. So I think the accretion of garbage, it's like space junk, right? Like there's so much junk floating around from satellites and spaceships that we put up there that you getting out of Earth's orbit now without hitting junk is hard. And I think we're making space junk, and it's not just away, it's there. So I think, again, the move from nascent to owning the responsibility of our actions, I think we will be convicted by this when we try to do, I've been with the same hosting provider for like 7 or 8 years, and there have been so many WordPress security, denial of service attacks, infections and things, that my whole digital world has been there for years, and I'm gonna have to just like throw it all away. And I think that is going to be convicting. So there is infinite digital space, but most of the things we put there are still here. They're still accessible. They're still, Google accidentally takes us to things that are garbage still. So I think it's an interesting question.
Our attentions are not infinite, so the infinite space is really what the fact that it's limited resources is on the reading.
But I think it's also about how the page starts to express itself. I was listening to something on the radio, and they were talking about the problems the Library of Congress have in trying to track the history and versioning of writers and try to bring that history to life, because when that writer titled a sentence, you want to see where they came from, the drafts and all of that. And they're literally using information. And they are more apt when someone is a little old school and likes to print everything to be able to bring that history to life. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to have this lost generation that will make us relook at longevity. So I think the pain will come to bear. It'll bear some research.
Remember when they told us CDs would last forever?
Yeah.
I have a CDR from a local band that I love that can't play anymore. And I wrote to their guy who sells digital versions of their stuff, and he was going to rip one for me from his CDR. His CDR also doesn't work. He hadn't played it. It's 15 years old. He hadn't played it. He's like, okay, I'll help you out. Oh, mine doesn't work either. All of our copies of that Entropy, it's peeled off of the film. It's not there anymore. So yeah, maybe it's the experience of loss of something that maybe it's not the appreciation of the things we don't want anymore getting in our way. Maybe it's the loss of the things that we thought that we had that we don't have that will address this permanence thing. Clearly, I could keep talking to you all forever.